Hey guys, I got a phone call from Robert Shrewsbury, or Robert Three Eagles as some people know him by, telling me that he had congenital heart disease and he didn't know how much longer he'd be around, and he wanted to share some things with us. So my work schedule is crazy. I work 24/7 and I have a hard time even putting these videos out and getting to interviewing people. But I made a point to go visit Robert because Robert's a wealth of information. Done a lot of studying, a lot of research, a lot of scientific experiments, and if Robert had something to share, I wanted to get that. So this is the video, parts of the video that he did for us that he wanted to share with us, and sadly, it wasn't too much longer after this that Robert did pass away. At a young age, Robert helped uncover some giants that they'd found, and because of that activity in his life, that drove him to researching and figuring out who these giants were. And so a lot of this video is some of his research, some of his findings about the Nephilim. So with that said, Robert, I'm gonna miss you and thank you for sharing what you have shared with us. And I hope you guys enjoy this. Thanks. So I'm with Robert Shrewsbury. He invited me to come down and talk with him, and he's going to share some information about some giants and things near where he lives and some things he had some dealings with. And with that said, I'll just let Robert tell the story because it's something that I've been interested in a long time, but I never have really known the whole story, and let's just see what happens here. And with that said, Robert, take it away.
Well, the first time I met John Brewer was when I was in my 20s. I was pretty young, and David introduced me to him, and he asked me to help him because he says, Johnny Brewer has this cave and I'd like to have it, and we could work together and we could have it. And eventually, he says, you're a good talker, maybe you can. I said, okay. So we went over there, and he was working at the sewer plant, and he always worked graveyard in Moroni, Utah. And so we started that, and we would visit him periodically over a period of years. And finally, when I moved to Los Angeles. There was a lot of good work there. Johnny Brewer wrote me a letter. Well, we always corresponded in writing also because he liked us. And he says, I'm going to send you a wooden sword that I carved, and I'll send one to David. And in the handle, it takes 2 maps to get to the site. And he says, so you'll both have to have both of them if you're going to access the cave. So pretty soon there was a sword in the mail, and then later there was one for David. My sword said number 1, Robert. David said number 2, sword number 2. Anyway, so that's how that started out. And Johnny Brewer, well, he meant well, and that's how I come across it. Just one of those things. Is it a fluke? I don't know.
So those that don't know John Brewer and what he found and whatnot, can you tell us a story about that?
Oh yeah, Earl John Brewer lived in Moroni, Utah. He was out digging some arrowheads in one area, and a little deeper, and he noticed an opening. How can it be a little cave or something? So he penetrated it, and that turned out to be the cave. And there were some people in there, a woman and a man. He's about 13 feet tall. She's about 13 feet tall. I call them the Nephilim, and I got a good reason to believe they're related. And they call themselves, from what I've gathered, Wabanaki also, but that's the name of their confederacy, not the name of, because the Nephilim are not all of the same race. They belong to a confederacy. So
you're saying Wabanaki, not Anunnaki?
Well, that's another name for them.
The same name, huh?
Related. I know that the Algonquin people, I'm related to them from my mother's side, claim, and it's accepted by more than 40 tribes, that they're the oldest known confederacy on Earth. And what did they call their confederacy? Wabanaki. There was some connection somewhere, the way I look at it. And as far as Johnny Brewer told me factually on a stack of Bibles that when he was up there at one time going into the cave, there were 3 men standing at a distance from him observing him. He looked at them and then they walked over to him and talked to him. They said, well, please don't bring anybody here unauthorized. And so then they turned, they walked away, and then it looked like he says they walked behind an invisible wall.
Really?
Both of them disappeared that way. Later they came back and talked to him and took him into their underground city.
Do you say what he's seen in the underground city?
Oh, he just says it was a very beautiful place. He says the people in there have all kinds of powers, mental powers, to do things.
So is this near his cave?
It is. It's right there. I won't say that.
Okay.
It's there, and it's from my detection work, I found all of those installations that are underground cities are housed with silicon carbide. Now, I don't know if you know what that is.
I don't.
It's beautiful, but it's like a gemstone. It's found in nature, and it can also be made. And it a diamond is 10 hardness. Silicon carbide is 9.8. It's pretty hard stuff. Carbide, they use it for cutting blades and things like that. But, anyway, that's it. I can't prove anything I'm saying on that regard. But I have detected those all over the place. Whenever you, what Johnny had was a burial. The people live underground. They live in underground cities. He has a burial. So they bury him up topside. They don't bury him in their homes, in the cities. And there'll be a tunnel underneath, about 100 feet deep, another one underneath that, about 6 layers deep, about 1,700 feet long. And they're here. They're at the Skinwalker Ranch, the Green Frog Ranch, and all those goofy places. What I think is a phenomena that comes out of those places, a strange phenomena, I think it's a high-tech scarecrow. Keep people out. That's what I might take on it. But anyway, excuse me. Yeah, and so they keep them away, and most people fall for it. You know, John Hutchinson has one too in Arizona. Another scarecrow. But I have tested all those. I went up to the Skinwalker Ranch about 30 years ago with an EM83, and I run it over, and I just held tunnel after tunnel after tunnel after tunnel. Oh yeah. To tell you a little story about how it works, the EM83, I have one. Anyway, there's a site that I took on a partner with last year, and there was an actual treasure, Spanish, and I had done it by Dalvin, and it's a couple 100 miles from here. So we all drove out there, and we landed on the GPS was a big Spanish turtle.
Wow.
I hit it right dead on the money. So, and then I'd marked where the tunnel was, and the room is about 35 feet deep at the top of the room, and so on and so on. I marked it in detail, and there was no more thought about it. But a year had gone by, and they came by here about a month ago, roughly, and partners, and it says, we want more evidence. We just don't have enough faith in your dowsing. I said, oh, okay, well. Notwithstanding, I'd doused his house as a blind test and located his things. People get doubtful, and I'm not blaming them. They're nice people.
Yeah.
But so I said, well, you have to hire this guy. He's at Geo Western, and he'll go out there with an EM83.
Is he still alive, old
He is Gary Hewitt.
Gary Hewitt, yeah.
So Gary Hewitt goes out there with them. They paid him, and he doused exactly what I doused.
Really?
The exact location. Tunnel here, room here, metal here. That just blew him away.
Yeah.
I says, well, are you guys doubtful now? I said, oh, not now. Hey, they'll hit us sometime in April, or May, or whatever. But I took that same machine. Well, I have one like it. It needs to be repaired right now, so I can't use it. But to the Skinwalker Ranch, and I just hit tunnel after tunnel after tunnel after tunnel after tunnel. They're endless, and there's metals in them. So I'm saying, okay, I'm doing some scientific stuff. It's not just my dowsing.
No, yeah,
I like verification, because maybe I'm a doubting Thomas too. So
yeah.
That's all. But anyway, I met John Brewer, and that's all that stuff that's come up and come up and come up, and then finally, wow. All right. Anything else?
So you saying that they told him, please don't bring anybody here without the rite of passage. How does one get the rite of passage?
Well, they said don't bring anybody. I think they're talking about the mummies.
Oh.
Yeah. And as far as the city, they have technology so you can't even.
You won't be able to find the city.
Well, listen. Did you know Charlene Hunt?
Yes.
I knew her really very well.
I didn't know her very well, but I've met her a few times. Yeah. Sure, Gary Clifton.
I asked her one time, Gary Clifton, yeah. I says, you live in Sigurd? She says, yes. I'm always looking for evidence. Okay. And she says, yeah, I do. I says, you've lived there all your life, haven't you? She says, yeah. I'm still living in the house I was born in. And she was about 80 at the time, I think, somewhere there. And I says, have you ever seen anything strange across I-70 into the foothills there to the north? And that's where she was. She'd shoot from the hip. She didn't care if you believed her or disbelieved her. If you disbelieved her,
she didn't care, huh?
Yeah. So she says, Robert, she says, I have seen the ground shimmy when I was over there. And then it would be a gaping hole there, like something out of Star Trek. And then these silver discs would go shooting out and then hover up in the sky. And she says one time they were doing that, and there was a cigar-shaped one, and these little silver discs would go in and out of the cigar-shaped one like it was a transport, and then back down into the ground. And she says, Robert, I have seen that at least 100 times in my lifetime.
Wow.
I tested it out, and I pick up the silicon carbide, I pick up all the burials, and they can be picked up with an EM83. Anybody that wants to can hire Gary Hewitt. I'll tell them where to go. If they're doubting Thomases, they got some people. They just love to doubt. On the other hand, there's so much sci-fi BS.
Yeah.
How do you know what to believe?
Right.
But I always say, test it. Test the waters. If you want to know the truth, spend the time and the money. That's what I told these guys. So they went out there and tested it. And then they took the well rig that I had, and they drilled a hole down 35 feet and popped through the top, dropped the lipstick camera down, got a picture of it. Well, I don't think I douse. But I'm a lot better today than I was a month ago, and a month before that, and a month before that. I get better all the time.
Yeah.
It used to be really difficult for me to douse something that was a small target, like 50 pounds. It's not now. But something that was like tons or 1,000 pounds wasn't so bad. Now I can get the small stuff too. It doesn't matter. So anyway, that's anything else on the Brewer Cave. I'm going to give you the location of it today.
Okay.
And it's just for you. I'm not going to give you.
Yeah. Yep. So a lot of stories about Brewer Cave, what was in there. We had the bark of one of the boxes that came out there tested between 50 and 350 BC. You had some artifacts tested.
Yes.
Tell me about them artifacts that you had tested, and
I had a lead plate. I still have it tested. That came out of the Brewer Cave with 3 other lead plates and then 4 rectangles. They're probably floating around the web someplace. And Frank Aon in Santa Fe, New Mexico he's a forensic specialist. I could even print you out a copy of that.
I think I have a copy of that.
Okay. And it's authentic.
He said it was ancient.
Yes, ancient. So, what can you say? Say they're all wet? I don't think so.
What else did? What's some of the stories that Brewer told you about inside the cave while he was excavating it, and things that happened, what he's seen, how long it took him, how long was he down in there, why did he keep on? I mean, I listened to Brewer's story, and there's not a lot of people who would do what he did. You know, it was like he knew something, and he was driven.
He was tenacious. He was a doer.
There was not many people in this world will do what he did, and that's why he got to see what he got to see, but it destroyed his life. So tell me about that.
Well, he went there and he did the digging, and then he could see the opening, but it was kind of like a drop off. You couldn't get to it, like a cave that went in and then get clear over here. So he rigged some equipment to do that. It's still on the side. So he dropped down and hung on to the rope and made it over to there, and then once he got in, he could see a stairway that went down. And so he very carefully, walked down the stairs. And then one of them was like a shaft. It was a trick. So if you missed it, you'd end up. Okay, and then also, before that, it was something that was carved round like this and highly polished. It was really big, and it went into a shaft. And if you slip on that, you won't ever. You're gone. That was a trap that kept you out. Once you got through that, then you still had to go. He had to have been a tenacious son of a gun.
Heck yeah.
All by himself?
Yeah.
He's gutsy.
Yep.
And so they got through that, and then he got down in there, and there was a lot of there was records, other records there too. And so he looked at them and he took some out. Yeah. That's all I know.
So I know that the majority of the pictures floating around on the internet of John Brewer's stuff came directly from you. The majority of them came from you.
Yeah.
And you know, so one of the things on there is because, and I know that because you gave me a copy of them years and years ago. You know, and I appreciate that.
A lot of people don't want to mention my name ever because they want to glorify themselves in self-advertisement. I'm not looking for that. But yeah, most of them came from me.
The majority
most of them,
they
came from Brewer to me.
Yeah. So there was one in there that showed the drawing of the inside of his cave, and it showed that kind of a death trap thing right there.
Oh yeah.
Right at the bottom of the stairs. If you didn't know, I'm assuming at one time, you know, that it was covered with some sticks or cloth or, you know,
it may have been
something, dirt, so that if when you hit that bottom step, you didn't know that was a trap, man. You fell to your death.
Oh, you would.
And so you know, there was things like that, but I'm sure that thing would already been triggered when he got into it, because he found it, you know, thousands of years later, when it was put there, you know.
He did.
But and I'm sure the Indians had found it and got in there before him.
They usually cover them up because it's taboo.
Yeah. So do you know? Did he ever try to explore that bottomless hole, that death trap thing? Do you know if, you know?
I don't know what he did. He may have bridged it with something and left it there. It's just been a long, don't know. So, but he was a tenacious son of a gun to do what he did.
I don't know. There ain't
very few people
would spend the time to do what he did. And that's why he found what he did, is because he spent the time. Most people would have given up.
Yeah, I think he was destined to do that.
100%, I believe he was destined to do that.
Yeah, I think so.
There is not many people who would spend the time to do what he did.
Well, now for whatever purpose, it's going to be in your hands. You want to be careful. The system could shut the whole thing down, and John Q. Public would see nothing. You need to video it first, take pictures.
Oh, 100%. It needs to be shared with the world.
Yeah, so you got that ahead of time and multiple copies.
Yeah.
Because I know they'll do that. They will not let that information out. For one thing, there's these crystal balls in there. Crystal spheres strewn around, and there's these little cups in there. They're solid with a little depression in the top. And if you stick one of those crystal balls on one of those cups, it'll light up and glow.
Really?
Mm-hmm. If there's still thorium left in it. And I know how that works. I've even seen a NASA scientist demonstrate it.
Really?
Les Matthews. He showed it to me and Stephen Jepson and Donnell Adair over there in Mayfield. He took he had a rope, looked like a pen, not that tall. On the end, it looked like an eraser, but it was a crystal. And he pressed something, slid it up, and it glowed brighter than any LED you'll ever see.
Really?
And I said, Les, what is that? That can't be an LED. And he said, hell no, it's not. He says, no LD will get this bright. He says, that's an emerald. He says, you know how nuclear works? I says, yeah, you have beryllium and boron. Beryllium speeds up the neutrons, and the boron slows it down. That's the modulator. And he says, oh, that emerald crystal is beryllium crystal. And he says, I have a little BB-sized piece of plutonium at the top, and when they come together, it lights it up. That's their source of light. There's technologies that you're dealing with that I don't think they want to come out, and that would be hushed up if they did excavate it. Just keep that in mind. I've done my research.
Yeah.
And but anyway, it'd be interesting.
So I know that Brewer was always looking for a big repository on the west side of the valley here, because he found a map.
There is one.
He found a map in his cave that said so, and you talk about that.
He had a map, and I don't have that map, that shows 7 locations. Okay, and he tried to get into that one. He did make it to the entrance, and he saw typically those crystal spheres on the floor, and then big tall doorways. And he made a few footsteps in, then he had a bad feeling about it. So he got out of there. And then there's another one above Mount Pleasant. I could tell you where that one is. Maybe you won't have the tenacity to penetrate it. It could be on private property, though. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I even have the symbol that was written on it. He gave that to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And what that looks like. They all have a symbol over them, and the symbols are not the same. They're different place to place. They don't have a piece of paper to write on it yet. Now, I'm sure some of this you'll want to take off.
Yeah.
For your own personal. I went up there, and I think it's covered with slough off. If you can find it, that's what it'll be.
So this is the one up here. What the symbol? Do you know what the symbol looked like?
Well,
I know he was looking for a symbol for the one.
I don't have that
west.
symbol or this one. That's the one above Mount Spring City.
Spring City. Huh.
Yeah, Spring City. It's one of the 7.
Ah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Here in this valley, there's been some people who have found them, and then they've been collapsed in, or some of these tunnels, or dynamited.
They stripped some of them.
They stripped them. They took them out.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah. They take them.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a secret. I can detect them, and you know that.
Yeah.
And they're in a lot of places. Nevada, Arizona, Idaho, the Philippines. Yeah, that's what the Japs were robbing.
Oh, really?
And that's what the Spaniards were robbing. They were robbing their burials. That's how they got their loot. That's why when you detect a Spanish treasure, I can detect it. I can tell it from that because the Spanish treasures have a signature. Everything does. For example, if I'm looking for a Spanish treasure, I don't set my system for gold. I set it for gunpowder.
Ah.
They all have it. And 9 out of 10 times they'll have bronze cannon. Once I got that established, then I check it for gold and silver. But the ones that they did around those tunnel areas have platinum in them and gems of all sorts. And rubies and emeralds and sapphires. And because
Really?
they were taking the stuff out of those burials. And they found one early on that I read about in Bolivia. And it was so wealthy that it raised the average European's wealth, called Cerro de Oro, raised their wealth about 8 times.
Really?
It caused inflation, and they had to start vaulting the gold by orders of Spain. Just don't want them to spend too much. Yeah, but they're in Ecuador. They're just both the underground people live all over the underground. They live everywhere, and some people accidentally hit the tunnels when they're drilling a well for water. So it sounds pretty far out, but I've done over 300 blind tests, and I pass them pretty good. So I don't doubt what I'm detecting, because I've always been able to verify it with an EM83. And so, who are they? Who are they? They're the Nephilim. In the book of Enoch, it says they were put underground because they were causing trouble. So, it was forbidden for them to come. Anyway, so they live underground. The way I see it. Does the government want that out? Of course not. I don't think they do. They don't tell us about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to be sci-fi. I'm trying to be realistic with
Right.
what I know and see and understand.
Right.
So, well, are you ready to get the information on the location?
Yeah.
We'll have to go on the other route. I may have to